Okay, so we are up to Mishlei Yud Gimel Yud 13:10. And this is one that I believe I have not done before. Which are those are rare. So at least in the middle of Mishlei. Rak bizadon yitain matzah, the es noatzim chochma. This is one of the quasi-rhyming ones. Um, yeah. Okay, so anyone want to try to take a stab at it? And as you can see, matzah is not the thing we eat on Pesach. Okay, so don't get any ideas. Although that may make a good Dvar Torah, maybe. We'll see. Anyone want to try?
Um, Only with brazenness.
Okay, good. Brazenness is fine. We'll probably have different translations of that, but that's how I would have translated it.
Yeah. Will strife be given?
Okay, good. Will strife be given?
And helpers have chachma.
Okay, so Noatzim is advisors from Ya'atz. So S here is used in the sense of with. Okay, usually S is not a translatable word, but sometimes it's used for with. Like, what would be an example where we use it with? I don't know offhand, but it's with. And with advisors is wisdom.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so here we have in my BDB translations here, Mata is strife and contention, Ya'at is advisors or counselors. To me, advisors and counselors are the same, so I'm not going to bother writing both translations. Okay, Metzudas Tzion says Mata is inyan meriva. He says kamo hein lariv umatza tatsumo. So it means quarreling or strife. Okay, I'm going to say quarreling. Quarreling. Actually, what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna say it like this with matzah. Okay, and I'll put in I think because we're gonna have probably lots of different translations of matzah, so I'll just put this as an asterisk here. So matzah is strife, quarreling, conflict. Okay, all right, that's what Sistian says. Sadigon says rak azus te'ase hamriva. So only with azus, and that's why I think Isaiah's translation is good, brazenness. He says, and Kafach says tirgum zadon. There's the Arabic word v'hu ha'ose neged chavero b'masa zdoni lolo kol busha. So it's so he says zadon. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and put zadon here also with zadon. Um, actually, I changed my mind about the format here. Let's do this like that. Okay, there we go. All right, yeah. So zadon is brazenness. So Sadigon says zadon is one who acts against his fellow with a brazen act with no shame, without any shame. Okay, so it's brazen. I think to me that's kind of like part of the definition of brazenness is the shamelessness factor. Okay, then the Targum I think is fairly straightforward, but Targum says L'chod bezadunusa asya matzusa. Only in brazenness comes strife. V'ilan de mismalchin hakime inun. But with those who advise, sorry, who I guess who de mismalchin hakim. Okay, I'm not exactly sure how the syntax goes, but with advisors, no. V'ilan de mismalchin hakime inun. With I think it's with those who take counsel, they are wise. I'm not 100% sure about that. I don't know how confident I feel. Okay, and then the Malbim says that matzah, he says matzah is hamariva sheba alide haka. So he's more specific. He says it's fighting that comes through blows, like physical blows. Uh, and he quotes a pasuk in Shemos. Next, no, 2 weeks parsha from now. For example, like when it says when two men quarrel and they strike a pregnant woman. So quarreling there is not arguing verbally; it's like fighting. Okay, so let's add here fighting. Okay, yeah. Okay, Art Scroll says only by willfulness is strife fomented. Okay, foment is so foment is an interesting word here, right? Foment means to like to stoke. Let me just look up foment. Foment is to instigate, to stir up. Yeah. So maybe instigate, I think is a good word, will be given or will be instigated, fomented. Okay. But with wisdom is those who take counsel. All right. Okay, I didn't have my rehearse, so I went with the Korean translation. Only by pride comes contention, but with the well-advised is wisdom. Okay. So they say pride. I don't know how I feel about that. Okay. Um, to me, that's not a, I'm not even gonna write it. I don't know how, I mean, I guess the closest thing is willfulness, or malice, I would also say is a good translation of Zadon. Okay. And then with the well-advised is wisdom, and then Alter says the empty man in arrogance foments strife, but with those who take counsel is wisdom. Now we had last week I shared with you my like taking a few steps back on Alter, saying that like when he messes with the words, then it's not always bad as long as he's relying on a manuscript. Here he says, though, in his comments, with Fox, the translation revocalizes the Masoretic rock to read rake. So it replaces the patach vowel with the other one, the sound, a sound. I mean, empty or worthless. Okay, fine. I'm not going to pay attention because he doesn't cite a manuscript or anything like that. Yeah, Mom.
I may be missing a lot of things, but one translation, the second
Yeah.
part of it says advisors, and another one says those who take counsel, which is the people who take advice.
Okay, right.
Are we talking about, yeah, I'm confused.
That's okay. So let's see if we can broaden this. Yeah, let's see. No, so Noatim, I think with those who take advice, with those who take advice, I think Noat is passive in that sense, is wisdom. Yeah, so let's go with that then. Okay, so let me move these guys. I'm gonna delete alter, and let's move these guys up and focus on what we have here. Okay, so we have here, and I'll put this in the chat. Actually, let me just think if there's anything else I want to add to this. Only with Zadon will matzah be given, instigated, or fomented, and with those who take advice is wisdom. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. All right, so let me put this in the chat. Okay. All right, questions. Yeah, Ayala?
So what exactly, how are these two sides opposite?
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
what is the situation such that they're opposite?
Okay, right. So let's ask both those questions. What is the situation? Well, I guess what situation, if any, is this describing? Okay, then okay, I guess what is the relationship between the two halves of this pasuk? Okay, are they opposites? And if so, how? Okay, yeah, Rifki.
Also, not in terms of each side, but between each side, like the Zadon and Matzah, and then also the Nosaim and Chachma, how are those two related to each other? I guess those four are related to each other.
Yeah, sure. So I guess specifically, how are the Zadon and the I'm gonna actually write the Hebrew here, and with no atzim, those who take advice is chachma. Sorry, is chachma wisdom. Yeah. Okay. So how you're asking how are the Zadon and the Noatzim opposites, and how are the how is Matzah and Chachma opposites? Is that what you're saying, Rifki? All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry, I think I was asking more like the relationship between each one individually, meaning like Zadon and Matzah, because those are really being compared, like they're in one half as
Okay.
opposed yeah.
All right, so because what I wrote is also good, I'll say, yeah. Actually, you know what? I'll put this as a separate question. Okay, what, like, how okay? What is the relationship? What is the relationship between Zadon and Matzah? Right? How does one cause the other? Yeah, Isaiah.
So this is like a sub of number 3, but like specifically if you translate Zadon as brazenness. So I
Mhm.
feel like brazenness is not like certain types of brazenness may cause strife, and certain types of
Right.
brazenness have nothing to do with strife. So like, what do we mean by brazenness?
Okay, I actually want to okay, so we'll list that as a question first. What okay, let's put this as a definition question. What is Zadon in this context? And then I think I want to make this as a question on, I don't know exactly how to phrase this, but how absolute are the preposition are the statements in this pasuk. Okay, so for example, it says only with Zadon will matzah be given. But is this really true? Okay. It seems like I know this is not what you're asking, but it's the flip side of what you're asking is matzah. Seems like matzah can come from cases that don't necessarily involve Zadon. And then what you're asking is likewise what's the converse of this? That oh yeah, that you were asking, does Zadon always produce matzah?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that was thicker of what
Okay, right. So does so I guess does Zadon like always result in matzah?
Right.
Seems
And-
not. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's both.
Okay, good. Okay, Ariel.
Yeah, what's the chiddush of the pasuk?
Okay. So what yeah, I mean, are you asking that because you're saying it's obvious, or are you asking that
A
for
little bit. I mean, at least the way we're translating it. I mean, I feel like, look, if you have malice, I feel like it'll naturally, I don't know, result in conflict.
right? The reason why I'm questioning, I think it's a fair question to ask on the second half, that with those who advise is
I
wisdom.
mean, yeah, definitely the second half for sure.
Yeah. I think the reason that makes the first half not obviously an obvious pasuk is the rock. Only with Zadon will matzah be instigated, and I think that's what I was getting at with this.
Meaning it's excluding other
Yeah,
things.
and it is kind of, I'm actually very curious to see how often Mishlei says only. I don't seem to recall Mishlei saying that a lot, but usually, Mishlei makes absolute statements, but you could read them as not absolute. Mishlei, yep, this is the only time Mishlei says only.
Wow.
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So it is very strange then that Mishlei says yeah, so to me that's what makes it the whole puzzle not clear. But I can ask that on a
So
second.
the question then is, I mean, you're bringing out another question, which is like, what is it? Why say only? I mean,
Yeah.
what's the chiddush? I mean,
Yeah,
what's the
so that I will put this over here. And if only doesn't necessarily mean only, then why say it? Yeah, okay.
I
Can I
wonder
ask
if like,
And on that specifically,
Yeah.
just like between, I'm pretty sure the word was sham. Was that the word that we were talking about like 2 weeks ago about like how
That
there's like
sounds familiar. Let's see. Boop, 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 boop.
oh yesh, it was yesh.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, so
Yeah.
right, that is a category, right?
Yeah, so I'm wondering like, is it something like more akin to like that type of pasuk?
Right, right. It does seem to be its own category, but it's like the Rama says, it's a category like the sun is a category. There's only one of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you have a category if there's only one instance of like rock? Like, what does that mean?
Well, what I mean by that, that was why I was jokingly bringing in the Ramam's comment that I mean, now we know that there is more than one sun, but like, whatever. There's only one sun in the solar system, because
Yeah.
it's its own category if it is qualitatively differentiated from all the other particulars,
Oh, I
So
see.
like,
Okay.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got your joke now.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, by the way, just for background info, he was saying that that's in his statement about how there's three ways that people relate to Midrashim. There's the people who take everything literally and simply, and then they praise Chazal for it. That's category one. Then group one. Group two is people who take everything Chazal say in Midrashim literally, and then they degrade Chazal for it. And then group three is the people who actually like realize that Chazal are saying something beneath the surface, and they try to understand it based on the true intention. And he says those people are so few that like I'm calling this a group, but it's only a group in the sense like the sun is a group, meaning that there's only like it's you know there's too few members to actually like constitute a club. You know, you wouldn't be able to get permission to have an after school club or a club hour or club for it in a Jewish school. Yeah. Okay. Next is my dad.
Yeah, the point you made in number 5, I would the second half of the pasuk, that those who take advice is wisdom. That's not always true. It depends on who you're getting advice from.
Okay. Right. So I'll say alternatively, you could say that this is not always true. It depends on who you're getting advice from. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I think that's actually probably more of a pressing problem than what's the Chiddush. Yeah, Ayala.
I don't know if this is just a pshat question, but the word yitain kind of sounds weird to me. So I guess like
Okay,
what
yeah.
exactly is
Yeah,
it
I
doing?
guess that would go in the question about the relationship between Zadon and Matzah. And then I guess specifically, what does the pasuk mean by yitain, right? Give, instigate, foment, what else we say? Yeah, right. It's a weird word. Yeah, I also found that weird, but I also don't know if it's my lack of knowledge of biblical Hebrew. Yeah, Isaiah?
So to me, like the word the rock Zodom, it seems like there must be like some sort of action that is qualifying. Maybe if you translate it as malice, you don't have to say that. But like if it's brazenness or willfulness, so something is being done brazenly or willfully, and
Yeah.
what type of thing is it that's being done? I guess that's kind of like asking
Okay.
what the situation is.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna put this into, so what is Zadon? And then I'll say like, what does bit Zadon mean? It sounds like it's qualifying something, an action, with Zadon. So what is being qualified? Yeah, Rivki.
Also, what is the like I guess who's the audience? Because it doesn't give like any specific characters.
Right. Who is the intended? Yeah, and this is something that I feel like is going to point. I feel like if you take this question and the question about the opposites, then that'll point to a direction. Meaning, like, if you're talking to someone who's looking for chachma, so then, like, the second half makes it sound like you're talking to someone who's looking for chachma. The first half makes it sound like you're talking to someone who is trying to avoid, matzah. So like, how is that one audience? Like, what scenario is there going to be like one person being addressed there? Yeah, Isaiah.
I guess it to me feels like there's a little bit of like you pointed out that the question I was just asking has to do with the be in Zadon.
Yeah.
And there's no equivalent thing by the no atzim. It's more like the no atzim or
Right.
that's like a type of person.
Right. So actually,
I guess the question is like, what's the deal with that? Like, how things are different on both halves. I don't know.
yeah, right. Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I think that's going to be covered by the situation question, the Zadon question, and then the relationship question. But I do think though that might point to an answer, which is that the relationship between bi Zadon is the same as the relationship to es no atzim. Being with advisors is the same as being in a situation with Zadon. But I'm not sure about that. But that might be a clue. Yeah, Rivki.
Yeah, it could be that I'm completely just not remembering how like Mishlei is written, but I do think it's interesting the way it says like Nutzaim Chachma. Like, is it saying, I guess I'm just confused on what the Chachma is on. Like, is it that those who seek advice have Chachma, or is it that like they're getting Chachma from other people? Like, I'm not exactly sure what
Okay, yeah. So let's ask that similar question to what we said about 3. Hold on, or about 4, which is similarly, what is the relationship between like counsel and chachma, right? How does the chachma come from the advisors? Yeah, Ayala?
So what specifically does chachma mean in this context?
Yes, we did not ask that. You're right. Okay, what does chachma mean? Oops, sorry, chachma mean in this context? Yeah. Okay. Before we think, and while we're thinking about more questions, I have to share something. So two things happened in the last 24 hours that just remind me of something like that we take for granted. I just wanted to like bring it out. So I graded my Mishlei midterms, okay? And one of the it was a 4-part, oh, sorry, not midterms, it was midterm assignment. I did not have to give a midterm. And so one of the parts of the midterm, I required students to write instructions for how, like I said, pretend that you're learning Mishlei with someone who's never learned Mishlei before. Write out basically the instructions about how you would go about learning Mishlei, you know? So I, and basically my goal was to see what they would say based on our semester of learning Mishlei, And the funny thing is, I was very lenient with grading, and I'm guessing that this is just something that like students like just forgot to mention, because there's no way you can go through my classes and not know this. There were a handful of students who forgot to write the step of asking questions, and like it is such a fundamental thing that we take for granted. And the other thing that happened was I shared this in two of my chats, the women's chat and then the Mishlei, no, the discussion chat. So you might have already seen this. But over the summer, then I ran into this guy and became like, not friends with him, but like I became conversation partners with him in Starbucks. This guy who's the head of Bezos Academy that Jeff Bezos basically appointed to like start this preschool program to like educate like like to try to transform preschool in America, and this is a guy who like reports directly to Jeff Bezos. And so we were talking about stuff, and then he mentioned in passing that he and his son and his wife are starting a Bible study program, and he knows that I'm a rabbi, and so he just asked me point blank, what is the approach to studying the Bible? And I don't think I've ever been asked that in such a point blank manner, So I told him, I said, well, I told him earlier in the conversation that we learn, my specialty or my focus this year is Proverbs and Psalms, So I told him basically the methodology that we use for Mishlei and the methodology we use for Tehillim. But for Mishlei, I just told him, I said, we take each verse, we ask as many questions as we can, we try to come up with answers that explain the main idea in a way that makes it that has practical applicability. And just saying something about like talking with a complete non-Jew who wanted to like just understand what's the method for studying Bible, and just saying ask all the questions and try to answer them. You would think that that's an obvious thing, but then when you look out at the world, you see people don't do that. Like that's just not the typical way, because people don't have that training. I mean, people like how many English classes did you go to? I mean, I'm not saying English should be like equated with learning Tanakh, but like I feel like in the secular world, English class is the closest that people get to textual analysis, And in how many classes do they teach you in just the normal like school experience? Yeah, ask questions on the definitions, ask questions on the things that don't make sense, and like try to answer them. I don't know, something about it, like it's been standing on my mind for the last like 24 hours. That's just like a very, very simple thing that no one does, and like this is just good practice in doing it. So just wanted to mention that. Yeah, Rivki.
Yeah, I did not like specifically related to what you just said, but that was very interesting. I was just thinking, and like I don't know, this is like more towards an approach, but I'm wondering when it says like only with Zadon will like matzah happen, is that more on the Zadon or on the matzah?
Sounds like it is saying that that okay, if you picture a giant circle that says Zadon, and then inside is a smaller circle that says matzah, meaning only matzah can only happen with Zadon. Matzah can't happen outside of Zadon.
Interesting. Okay,
That's
I
where
was kind of the opposite, but that makes sense also.
Yeah, I think grammatically you have to read it that way. Yeah, which is the problem, but yeah. Okay, let me copy and paste these questions into the chat, and then oh yeah, Noah says in the chat, the big method for a peaceful, productive writing workshop is all the questions, and then often only the questions. Yeah, I was reading in the book in what's his name? Sean Parrish's book, something Clear Thinking, that he said that I don't know if this is like a trend or if this is just what he does in his company, but he says that when they have meetings at work, then what they'll do is they'll devote one session entirely to questions, and then they'll have a separate meeting for answers. Because the problem is, if you have a meeting where people are trying to answer things as they ask questions, everyone immediately gets too narrowed and doesn't stop to let the question sink in. And I feel like that's it would be I don't think it would work practically if we did that with Mishlei so much, but like that's what I do when I insist in all my classes about listing all the questions before we attempt answers, because it's like you got to let the mind go through the process of just getting all the questions out fully, and then you can then there's hope for like productive answer thinking. Oops. Okay, this is gonna mess up the numbers, so I got to correct the numbers. 7 and 8 and 9. Okay, so let's have our thinking minute. And I'm going to actually post the modified translation again because we did change it a bit. Okay. Just to point out methodologically in terms of how to think about this, I think because we have this problem of the rock, only with Zadon will matzah be instigated, then you have to think about the definitions of Zadon and matzah together, meaning how can Zadon be defined narrowly enough such that only with Zadon then is matzah produced, or what specific kind of matzah is, you have to define that narrowly enough that it is only ever produced by Zadon. Like I think you have to think about the definitions together.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Yeah. What does it mean that no atzim is? Do we ask that? What does it mean that no atzim is chachma? Is
with no atzim is chachma?
What?
With no atzim is chachma. Not
with no
not
atzim
yeah, not no atzim is chachma. It says with.
Oh, I see. And with no atzim. I see.
Yeah, that's the S. Okay, let's start with my dad.
So the person whose willfulness and taking advice are polar opposites.
Right.
And this, I can't help but think of Elon Musk and how willful he was in wanting to get things done and how things should be done. And he admits later on, maybe I made a mistake. And
right.
The mistake was the unwillingness to take advice.
Yeah.
To find the wisdom in taking advice.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know if that's
yeah, no. Yeah, right. So meaning that if you are full on extreme with brazenness, then that's going to negate the taking of advice, and only advice can only happen if you're on the if you're the opposite of the Zadon of the brazenness.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's a good observation. Okay, so so Zadon and advice are opposites in the sense that if you are completely like taken by the extreme of Zadon, then you are not open to advice. And the less Zadon you have, the more open you will be. I think that points the way to a definition of Zadon. So I think that's a good step for that. Yeah. Okay, Rivki?
So I was thinking that it's not like fully baked, but I think that I was just thinking about the relationships between all of the different words.
Yeah.
And kind of that, like almost the idea of the pasuk would be like what you give is what you get, kind of meaning that like yeah, but like actually like even if you're trying to hide it, which I think generally like brazenness, it like I would say that you're not, like I feel like when you're brazen, like you're outwardly, that's what you get. So I think it's a very like direct relationship of like if you're being like brazen and you're not being, I guess, like nice and, open to the other person that you're speaking to, whether it doesn't matter what type of relationship it is, then that's what you're going to get. You're going to get matzah, which is why it's such a specific definition. It's a direct correlation. Whereas, and then the other half of the pasuk is like very specifically, like kind of like almost like what your dad was just saying, that if you're open and if you genuinely want to learn from other people, no matter who it is, then you will get that chachma from whoever that person is.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think that's another good step. So I think we're circling in on it. I feel like these are both related. So we'll keep these here and see if they coalesce into other ideas. Yeah, or into more developed ideas. Isaiah?
Okay, so so I'm thinking about it like this. So the person who acts willfully or even brazen, when sort of in a situation where they are being advised,
Yeah.
like we said before, like they don't take advice. So they have, actually, I want to start on the other side. Someone who listens to someone else's advice and acts based on their advice, so they can always avoid the situation of like coming to blows and strife, because if they did like a misstep, it was the other person's fault. And like it's not like they were taking advice. Like it wasn't like they acted of their own will. But someone who like doesn't take someone else's advice and instead like acts of their own accord, like, so then especially if they're going against advice, then I feel like they're opening themselves up to like more, like a person might take offense from the way that they acted and like, feel like they're, being attacked.
Okay, so that's interesting. To me, that strikes me as a different approach, which is fine.
Yeah.
But right, which is that I'm going to start the way that you did, which is if you are taking advice, then if things go wrong, then you are not entirely to blame because because I guess the plan was a group effort. But if you act with Zadon, in contrast, or not in contrast, I guess against advice, against or without advice, then it's all on you, which produces a different kind of cause for quarreling.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's another fruitful approach. Yeah. To me, now it's possible that the two approaches are related, but to me, that seems to be a different approach. I like that we have two now. Okay, Mayan.
Yeah. So my approach is very similar to both your father's and Rifki's.
Yeah.
With like a little bit of nuance to it, I think. I think that like starting off with even more, with like the most similar is if you're gonna be someone who takes advice, then I think that like if you're open and if you're like willing to learn and to hear and to take advice, then you can have chachma as an outcome. I don't think that it doesn't say rock over there. I think that it can be, meaning like I was thinking of this very much in terms of like legal counsel and advice. And if you're open to taking legal counsel and advice, like maybe you're gonna end up winning the suit or whatever that form of chachma would be, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. But if you're talking about acting bezadon, then if you have like a motive and you have this like pure, like if you have this evil thing that you're trying to accomplish or thought or this zadon, then it kind of reminded me, I think your story was like penetrating into like my thoughts over here. That reminded me of like the not really giving yourself time to ask questions. Like you're not opening yourself up to even hearing the advice. You're kind of like finagling your way to try to find something that will work with this evil act, as opposed to letting that chachma come through.
Okay. So, then you're not going to be, so I'll read what I said and what I'm writing in a second, to any chachma input. Yeah. Okay. So if you're open to taking advice, then you can get chachma. I mean, you're allowing the chachma, you're creating the potential for chachma to seep in and to influence you. Not that you're definitely going to get it. That's why it doesn't say rock. But if you're acting bezadon, meaning that you're so single-mindedly attached to your motive that you won't even entertain anything else. So then you're not going to be receptive to chachma. And then, did you say yet the yitain matzah part?
So I didn't like specify, but what I was thinking was Like if you're kind of like you're saying, like if you're so attached to it and you're not like hearing, then it will result in conflict and it will result in quarreling and just, uproar
Yeah.
and fighting.
You know what we didn't ask, by the way? Okay, I think that's a great idea, by the way. I think this question might help us. We did not ask what is the definition of matzah in this context? And then matzah with whom, right? So presumably it's matzah with other people. But so I don't know if this is like if this could be extended to matzah with reality, or if that's too
I think it could also be matzah with yourself.
Yeah,
meaning
right.
like
Yeah.
inner conflict and frustrations that your like way that's going against reality isn't going to be able to go in line with what you
Right.
want in
So
reality.
so the thing is, I would have to see. I also was thinking in that direction because that's the direct, I think, conclusion of your idea, because that's what will happen. I have to see whether the word matzah is ever used that broadly in Hebrew, because in English we have the word conflict that is used that way. This is not going to work, by the way. I just want to see. Oh, interesting. Is this really the only two places that it's used? No, it can't be. Why are there not other things? Ohev pesha, ohev matzah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'd have to see. Okay. I think the idea is good. I just don't know whether the matzah can be extended to conflicts with yourself or conflicts with reality, or if it's specifically with interpersonal conflicts. I think even if we limit it to interpersonal conflicts, then I think that the idea still works out. But then we just need to tighten it up in terms of what's the subject of the pasuk, which is another question we didn't list. Ariel, this is your question. What is the subject of the pasuk, which unifies both halves? So if this is okay, so what would you say, according to Mayan, and I guess according to Rivki and my dad, what would you say the subject would be according to where we have the idea right now? I don't think there's one answer to this, but I'm just curious what you would say.
What do we mean by subject? Like
So
the
the
who
example,
or the what?
oh, sorry, no, I hate the word theme, but like the theme of the pasuk, or the example I like to give from Rabbi Moskowitz is, or actually, no, I'm not gonna give Rabbi Moskowitz's example. I'll give my example. Sorry for those who I think I said this in a morning share this month, so it would be review for that. But there's a pasuk that says Amar Atzel Ari Bachutz Barchovos Eratzeach. I think Amar Atzel. Sorry about this. I just think this is a good example. Yeah, okay, so Mishlei 22, no. 26:13. Oh, there's two of them. Okay. All right, I was thinking 22:13. Amar Atzel Ari Bachutz Besok Rechovos Eretzeach. The lazy person says, there is a lion outside, I will be murdered in the streets. Okay, so when you first read that pasuk, then you see the word atzel about laziness, and you think that, oh, this is an idea about laziness. The subject of the pasuk is laziness, and you could learn the pasuk that way, but the way Rabbi Moskowitz learned it was that it's a pasuk about excuse making and rationalization. It happens to be that laziness is the compulsive need to avoid immediate pain and conflict. And in order to avoid that immediate pain and conflict, the lazy person is going to warp his mind so much that he will like ascribe his avoidance of acting to very far-fetched things like being killed by a lion outside, which is the equivalent of like, I'll be hit by a plane if I step outside, that's just something that just never happens. But if you learn that this is about rationalization, and that's the subject, then really this expands way beyond laziness, that in order to justify acting based on your emotions, then you will warp your mind into these like crazy scenarios and say things that don't make any sense and just not catch yourself, So depending on how you define the subject, then you'll get a different direction of the idea. So to here, so for the way we're taking it with Mayana and Rivki and my dad, what would you say the subject of the pasuk is? Question for anyone. I'm tempted to say right now, at least, that this is almost a question about either I can't tell whether it's leadership or teamwork, that there is I think with leadership it's good that if you have a leader who has an idea and is humble and open-minded enough to hear the input from everybody, so then he's going to get chachma. Like a good example of that is like I don't remember the details, but Walt Disney had this policy where anyone who worked in Disneyland or in Disney Studios or whatever, I forgot which one came first, anyone who worked for Disney could suggest things to him, and like there was some I forgot some revolutionary idea that like the gardener suggested, and like he took he took everyone's idea seriously. That's really what we're doing in our women's Pirkei Avos here on Thursday nights. Ezehu chacham halom mikol adam, who is wise, someone who learns from everyone, But then you can have a leader who is again, I'm not saying that this was always the case, but Elon Musk had this quality, Steve Jobs had this quality that they call it the reality distortion field, where they had such they had a vision about how they wanted things to go, and there were certain points where they just didn't let anyone get in their way, and anyone who tried to oppose them was shot down, and it ended up creating conflict, with the other people. And the reason why I'm bringing this into other people is because the second half and the first half involve how you interact with other people. Are you treating other people as contributors to the best results, through seeking chachma, or are you treating them as obstacles that stand in the way of my vision, and so I think that's a good thing. I'll stop this for a second. Okay, back to this. All right, yeah. Ariel, what do you want to say?
Yeah, so it's funny, like I'm thinking that my idea is like similar to Rifki, Mayaz, and like your dad's.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to go another way. I think my subject of puzzle is a little different because I think their idea is almost like a consequence of my idea, but we'll see.
Okay, sure.
So I want to say that that the subject of the pasuk has to do with like reframing your mindset on how you view what it means to be brazenness, and confidence with no asim. Essentially, I think there's like a difference between. I think brazenness implies that you don't really you don't really seek advice, and you just like that's your internal framework, like that's who you are by as an individual. Like your mindset is, this is who I am, and I'm going to, act this way, and it's naturally going to result in, strife, conflict with your, I don't know, partners or friends or whatever. It doesn't really matter. That's just who you are by nature, right? And it's funny. I had like a minor question, like why use the term yitain, the word yitain? It's very like.
Right.
It's very giving, It's like
right.
It's almost like I don't know, it could have said, look, this is what's gonna happen, like this is what it is. It's almost like yitin, it's like I'm giving it to you. It's almost like here it is. Like this is almost like it's handing it off to you. It's almost like it's like an obvious natural consequence of your mentality. And if this is who you are by definition, of course it's gonna happen. This is exactly how it's gonna turn out.
Would be a good word for it, by the way. I think the way we're talking about it for yitain is contribute. Like what contribution are you making? Are you contributing are you receptive, or are you contributing strife? Like you think, like the Zadon guy, the way you're describing him, thinks he's giving to people by like bestowing his vision, but really he's just contributing strife,
Yeah. That's good. Now, and I had another question, and with no atzim, like, well, what's with no atzim? Like, I don't understand. Like it's almost like it's like, all right, there's no atzim, but what's with it? So I want to say that maybe like another term for brazenness, which people can get confused with, is like confidence. Maybe there's a difference in brazenness and confidence. I mean, you could have confidence in something, but you won't necessarily act foolishly, and acting foolishly is being brazenness. Like, but if you act confidence with no asim, like, and you're seeking advice, that's chachma. That's how you should approach something, to your, in your situation.
I'm slightly unclear about the move that you're making here. are you trying to extend the Zadon into the second half?
I'm trying to find the, the opposite,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that, it's possible, that if you're a brazen individual, you're overly confident, you're not going to seek out any advice.
Mhm.
Okay? But my question is, well, is that true about someone who's just a confident person?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And what was bothering me was, well, what exactly is the opposite of the second half of the puzzle? I'm trying to find that piece of the puzzle, and for me, it's a little unclear to me what's with no atzim.
Okay, this is another thing I want to ask you about. I mean, the statement is Chachma is with no atzim. That's what the second half says. So I don't know if you're missing that, or like with no atzim is Chachma.
With no atzim.
Chachma is with no atzim.
Wait, is that the same thing as saying? Wait, how is that the same thing as saying Chachma is with no atzim? Why not? I mean, I thought I was reading it with no atzim. It's Chachma, as in like there's something with no atzim.
No, Chachma is the thing with no atzim.
Oh, it's a little weird way of saying it, but okay.
That's how it says it in Hebrew, right? Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to make a clean translation of the pasuk, only with brazenness is. I mean, it's probably saying it that way because it's copying the structure of the first half. But if you want to say it like if you wanted to reverse it, matzah is only given with brazenness, but chachma is with no atzim. That'd be the simpler way to say the pasuk.
All right, fine. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's going to change the idea. It's just that like you should, and any individual, should just go and approach something with with more I guess I was using confident as like another something that's opposite of brazenness, but something that wouldn't be that's still in line with the the synonym.
Yeah, so
I feel like people get a little confused between
I
brazenness
hear what
and
you're trying to do. So there's two possibilities. Either I think that either I think you're trying to solve a problem that we've already solved the way that we've been interpreting it, or I'm missing the point that you're trying to make, because I think what we're trying to say here is that the reason why these are opposites is you have brazenness is the opposite of yielding. In other words, there's an unyielding personality, to put it in your terms, and then there's a yielding personality. The unyielding personality, who does not want to give up his vision, doesn't want to give up who he is, just wants to impose his will upon others, that person is, and that's why I think willful is the word. He just wants to put his will onto reality, that person is going to just generate conflict. But the person who's the opposite, it might be true what you're saying, that he has a vision or whatever, but he's completely open to receiving from others,
Well,
so
that's not how well, that's not my point. My point is different.
Yeah, so then I either I'm missing your point, or I think it's an inferior solution to the solution that we have. So I'm going to come back to you. You can think about it some more. Okay.
I can't. I've thought about it.
One more try. One more try.
All right. One more try is, you can be an individual who's brazenness, right? That I think the pasuk is coming to talk to someone about someone who doesn't know how to go about a specific situation, and he's just brazenness because that's just who he is, right? Given in that situation. But there's a better way of handling this issue of this specific situation. And what I'm trying to say is the pasuk is talking about a method on how to go about that route, which is you can be confident in a situation without being brazenness and still get what you want without fights. You can still impose your will just in a specific way on how you do it.
Right. I hear what you're saying. I just don't see that. It feels like you're injecting that into the pasuk, into the second half of the pasuk. I don't see where the second half is talking about someone who's confident, and I think that that anything that it is saying about confidence, I think, is reflected in the way we're saying it. We're just saying that we're not trying to put the confidence part into the pasuk.
Well, I'm saying in the second half of the pasuk, I'm getting the idea of confidence of, what's the opposite of the first half of the pasuk?
Right.
Meaning,
And that's what I'm saying. I think we're answering it in a clean way. First half is unyielding. Second half is yielding. Those are direct opposites. So the thing about Ariel, and you could come back. We have time later on, or you could put it into the chat or something. Okay, next is my dad.
So I have a question on just the translation of the Hebrew.
Yeah.
Does only just apply to brazenness, or could it apply to strife? Could you say that brazenness will produce only strife and conflict?
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. Yeah, rak bizadon yitain matzah. Rak bizadon. So the straight translation is only with brazenness, then strife will be produced. Could you translate it as with brazenness only strife? I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what you can do though?
They stand to reason that brazenness will not produce solutions; it'll just produce fighting.
Yeah, right. And I think that is the natural way that we've been going. But I don't know if it could be read that way. I'm not 100% sure. One thing I just want to note though, I think you could put. I'm wondering if you could put rock into the second half. V'rak es noatzim chachma. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah, Rifki?
Yeah, another point that I think might be beneficial is
Yeah.
that I was just thinking, like, what type of person does this pasuk apply to?
Yeah.
And so I think also, like, sometimes when you have, like, let's say a previous history with a person, that you can, like, have that, like, Zadon relationship, that you don't have to be a person that's completely brazen. Like, I don't think that it has to be like an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs or whoever it is, but, like, a person can have, like, brazenness with specific people in their life. And I think that, like, a good point is, like, that is just not a good quality to have for them. I mean, obviously, like, it's not at full, maybe sometimes it is. But like, generally speaking, it's not. So I think that the point is that it's much better to be someone who is accepting of advice from whoever it is, obviously depending on what they're saying, but that, like, just make sure that that's not a quality that you are portraying too much.
Yeah, okay, good. So, that reminds me that there is another way to read the pasuk, based on another pasuk in Mishlei. Let me just find it here. Okay, so there's a pasuk 11:2, which I guess we did at one point. Ba zadon v'yavo kalon. When zadon comes, then disgrace comes. And I think almost all the meforshim say it refers to an ish zadon, to a person who has zadon. But I think what you're saying is correct, is that this does not have to be a person who is always Zadon all the time. It could be an instance of doing an act of Zadon, and it could still produce strife in that particular case. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing deal. It could be if you allow Zadon to creep into any dynamic, when taking advice would be better, then it could lead to strife. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Mayan.
Yeah, so your father's question about reading rock on the matzah part kind of got me thinking. And not that I found like a way to be able to do that, but Dafka, I found something in the opposite that kind of like clicked to me.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, okay, like only with Zadon is matzah like given. I was thinking maybe it's saying that like in a situation of matzah, what like in strife, quarreling, whatever, then there is always Zadon that can be found. And when you like look at it, then you can find whether it's on your half or maybe it is the other person's half, but like taking a hard look, because it's really like really easy for us to like get caught up and be like, oh, well, we are 100% right. But as you can learn from someone who takes advice, often someone who is open and takes advice can find chachma. So when there's a case of when there's a case of matzah, well, you know that can only happen through zadon. So like we got to take a hard look at it from a more objective stance.
Okay, so I'm gonna write this down. I also, I got to think about whether this could be read this way, but I think it's an interesting idea. Whenever you have a case of matzah, you can be sure that zadon is somehow involved, whereas you said the second half really well. Say it again. You don't have to say it exactly the same way. Whereas looking,
I think what I said was that whereas if you're open and willing to take advice, never mind, it's gone.
Okay.
One-time deal.
Yeah. Great. Sorry, you missed it. Okay, that's good. Okay.
Oh wait, it's recorded. We're good.
Oh yeah, you're right. I forgot. Okay, good. So I think the idea we have here, so I just want to add one more thing also, which I don't know if I'm saying anything different. I think Zadon, the way we're talking about Zadon is, yes, I think willfulness is actually, I know we don't use the word in English that way, but willfulness, I think, is the best word for it, because what you're doing with Zadon is you're imposing your will on others, indiscriminately and unyieldingly. So Zadon is going to produce matzah because at some, at some point, then you're going to come in conflict with other people, because what are the chances that your will is going to be aligned with everybody? Like, that's just not going to happen, Now, can we? Whereas the Chachma, so Chachma is the opposite of Zadon. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I think there's a pasuk that says this in 14. Wait. It says, this is the pasuk about in Mishlei about snius. Oh, sorry, not snius, snuim. I'm just curious about this. I don't know when she'll have it. If she'll have students remember that we did a Yom Iyun, we did a special program where it was all about snius, but it was a snius program that had nothing to do with dress code. So I did Mishlei on snius. I did this pasuk. Oh, look, Baz Zadon Viavo Kalon. Oh, that's the one I just read. Yeah, that's Nuim Chachma. Okay, yeah, that's 11 too. When Zadon comes, then disgrace comes, but with those who are modest is Chachma. Yeah, why did I want to bring this? And I don't remember. But the point though is that to be a real chacham means that you have to let reality inform your mind, not impose your mind on reality, And the way you do that with other people is by asking for input. The way you do that in learning is by having your mind open, in other areas. But this is, I think, talking about how you get chachma with people.
It's interesting. It seems
Yeah.
like it's comparing like opposites of humility and like sanua with stubbornness.
Yes, it definitely is. Yeah. And yeah. And that, I do think that the two go hand in hand, that there is an element of haughtiness. I mean, the place where you see the haughtiness thing is in the characteristic of the lates, of the scoffer, which says, I don't know if David's on right now. David would know where this is. No, David's not on. Hold on. Mishlei. Okay. Zayd Yahir late Shmo Osei Zadon. I forgot where that is. But the haughty, malicious person, or the haughty, willful person, Lates is his name. Scoffer is his name, and he acts with the wrath of willfulness. So that's like the full personality, where not only are you willful in your mind, but you're also like aggressive in action, and that's gonna be making you a Lates. Yeah, Ayala.
Just to add on to what Rivki was saying before about how this isn't necessarily like a specific case.
Yeah.
But just overall, it reminds me of the book The Anatomy of Peace, which kind of like posits the idea of like you can have a heart at war where
Yeah.
you're kind of like you against the world. And it reminds me of like Zadon, you're brazen
Oh, right.
and like
That's good.
Like
That's
you
good call.
are the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it invites, like it causes everyone else around you to become on the defense.
Right.
And then there will automatically be conflict from that because it's like you against them.
Yeah, that's a good
Versus if you're like taking advice from people and not seeing yourself as a center in any way, it'll bring a chachma.
That's really good. Yeah, and the language fits in very well to the matzah, or the fighting. Yeah, that's a good call. I got to review that book. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, question on Isaiah's approach. So I guess like either you or Isaiah could answer.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but something with that approach is not sitting well with me. And I think the reason why, and it could be I just misunderstood, which is why I'm asking. And I think the reason why is because it almost feels like a cop out of like, oh, well, like someone else told me to do it, so it's not really like it almost feels like you're not taking accountability.
Yeah.
Where like I feel like getting advice, that's not the point of getting advice.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I also was unsettled by that as well. Yeah. Isaiah, you can obviously respond if you want to, but I feel like it's, and the reason why I didn't mention it at the time was because I didn't want to, if this is the idea, I didn't want to like reject it because it like I didn't want to stamp it out too quickly, you know, like but it did feel weird that that's the benefit that it's touting for Chachma, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at some meforshim here, and we can always come back to other approaches. Okay, so Metzudas David, just get a little translation going here. Okay, all right, so this is Metzudas David says Mi Shemasav Rak Bezadon this is gonna be totally different than what we've done, by the way. So Mi Shemasav, someone whose actions Rak Bezadon V'Haresha, or Rak Bezadon V'Harasha maybe, are entirely like malicious and wicked. I'll just say and wicked. Hu yitim riva bin bnei adam. He will cause strife between quarreling, I guess, quarreling between people. V'imanashim ha'osim ma'aseim be'etza u'v'mitun imahem u'v'mitun, and someone who and v'im anashim, and those who do their actions based on counsel and deliberation, imahem timsa chachma, with them you will find wisdom. Kilo tavo meriva al yadam, because a quarrel will not come about through them. Yeah, all right, that's weird. Some of his actions are entirely malicious and wicked. So one thing he's doing that we have not done, we are taking Zadon as a, for lack of a better term, morally neutral quality, meaning that it's just you're willful. You know, you can be willful for a very good idea, but what we're saying, like, let's say like, you know, you come up with a cure for polio, you know, but which is great. That's not wicked, you know, but let's say you go about it in a Zadon manner, then what we were saying is going to come true, and that's going to be bad. Metzudas David is saying that means evil. The first half is evil. He will cause quarreling between people, and okay, fine. And those who do their actions based on counsel and deliberation, with them you will find wisdom, because quarrel will not come about through them. So what idea is he getting out of this? What's not clear to me, I understand if your actions are entirely malicious and wicked, you're going to cause quarreling. That's going to have to happen. But what is the link he's saying for the second half? Yeah, Ariel?
Yeah, I mean, is he saying that the individual is a rusher, or just like his actions can be perceived as malicious and wicked?
Sounds like he's saying that they're actually, well, let's put it this way. Sounds like he's saying their actions are definitely wicked. Whether they are a full-blown Russia or not, I don't know if he's taking a stance on.
Right. I mean, can you? I mean, only try to bail him out, because
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand like exactly like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. Like the opposites are too far away from each other.
Yeah, that's my problem.
Right. So
yeah.
I'm trying. I mean, maybe you could say that like, you know, like if someone, you know, meaning like, I guess it could be perceived like if you're acting in a very, you know, crazy way, you know, it can be perceived maliciously, even though it's not, like, because it could be wicked to the situation.
Yeah, you know,
necessarily.
I sympathize with what you're trying to do, but I want to say he is talking specifically about people who are doing actually wicked things. Like that's Misha Masav Rak Bizadon V'Haresha. To me, sounds like it's actually wicked. So I think it's good to be down the.
I'm at a loss then. I'm at a loss.
Yeah. Isaiah?
To me, like the causality in the second half is a little weird. Like he's
Yeah.
saying that people who do their actions based on counsel and wisdom, with them you will find wisdom because quarrel will not come
Yeah.
about through. It
Yeah,
seems
that
more
would be
like with them you will find wisdom because they're listening to counsel and deliberation,
Yeah.
and that also happens to cause quarrel not to come about.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I'll take one step here, which is that it is very Mishleic here that, you know, if you ask David Melech, okay, in Tehillim, why shouldn't you be a Russia? He would say because it goes against God, you know, or something like that. Like it's bad, you know. But if you ask Shlomo, why shouldn't you be a Russia? Here he's saying it's going to cause fighting, and fighting is not going to be good for you. You know, like obviously there are many reasons not to be a Russia, but here he's saying that if you do your actions according to, you know, with the like, you know, even Rashaim don't want quarreling in the ranks, because quarreling at the very least creates annoyances and obstacles, and at the most creates the potential to be overthrown. So if you want to be a really good Russia, you should ask for advice, and not try to like just do things wickedly, and that would cause you to like dial back your wickedness to the point where you're not going to cause quarreling. But that's all I got from right now. Yeah, Ariel?
Yeah, that makes sense, and it reminds me of Achashverosh.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I think even though he's a Russia, he did exemplify the second half of what
Yeah,
Michelle was
right.
saying.
Right, definitely.
And like you could have a Russia who also just doesn't care, and that's self-destructive.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, good. So we got half the Mitzvah stuff. Let's go on to Rabbeinu Yonah, and then we'll do the Meiri, and then we'll call it a night. Okay. Rabbeinu Yonah says, "Rak b'zadon yitin matzah." Harasha. See, he also does the same thing. Harasha rak b'zadon yitin matzah. Okay. So the wicked person. Yeah, Rif, do you have a question before or a point before this?
Yeah, I had one on the Mitzvah David, but
Yeah, sure.
no, I was just wondering, is the chiddush, because maybe I missed something that you guys were saying, but isn't the chiddush that he's saying that it will cause quarreling between people as opposed to like just between the person and then whoever he's with? As you hear what I'm
That's
saying?
true. Yeah, right. Meaning meaning not between him and the other person, meaning among people. Yeah, right. That's a good point. Yeah, I guess, one other thing here. Okay, let's put it this way. Let's say let's take three cases, okay? No, let's not take three cases. Just one second. Well, I'm trying to think. Okay, there are forms of evil that are subtle, and there are forms of evil that are overt. So presumably this guy is engaging in actions that are overtly evil because he's saying someone whose actions are only with Zadon and Resha, So that kind of guy is going to be polarizing among people because there are going to be people who want to ally themselves with him to get on his good side or to like not be a victim. And then there are going to be people who are going to be opposed to him. So it is going to cause divisions to form in the ranks. Now, you could have that with people who do good as well, but I think it's not going to be as guaranteed because people are going to be more likely to be on board with doing good than with evil, like, yeah, if someone says I want to cure polio, there might be people who oppose him, who are like anti-vax or whatever, but but like I don't think that's gonna, someone who says I want to commit genocide, I think that's going to really polarize people, but yeah. All right. Well, look, we don't always get the full idea. Yeah. Ayala?
Can you say that it's like indicating to you where Chachma is? Like if you see someone that's like surrounded by a lot of strife and polarizing groups and whatever,
that's
then like
interesting.
steer clear. But someone who doesn't have that, like, you can find Chachma with them.
Okay, that's very interesting. I like that. Right. So let me just see, because that fits into the words. V'im anashim ha'osim ma'asem be'etzo v'miton imahem timtzah ha'chachma ki lo tavo mriva al yadam. Okay, that's a good idea. All right, let me just try summarizing this then. I'm going to put this closer to here because these are the fully developed ideas. So we have Mitsudas David as explained by Ayala, which is that this pasuk is telling you a litmus test for identifying an evil person. Okay, if everything they do produces strife, chances are they're evil. Okay, but if you find people at peace with them, then there's a good chance then not only are they not evil, but there's a good chance that you'll find Chachma there. That's a good approach. Okay, good. All right. Rabbeinu Yonah says, Harasha rak bazada nitin matzah. The wicked person, ki lo yichalas dona v'lo yimshol brucha v'yitzra. Hold on a second, I don't want to read this. Shemrivim mitzalad zazadan v'chino mekirim beteva hazadan hanimsa bam v'lo yafil al pi ratzon libam bios machlokas beinam uvina havirehem. Kimur ulai hazadan mate atas libam v'chevtam umisyatim imzalas sam. You know what? I don't have the energy for Rabbeinu Yonah tonight. I'm sorry. Sorry, Rabbeinu Yonah. Let's go to the Meiri. Okay, Meiri says, okay, Mechok Haga Hamadinis. One of the principles of, it's always difficult to translate Hanhaga Hamadinis, political conduct, but he doesn't mean politics like American politics, like politicians' politics. He means in the Aristotelian sense of like how to govern a society in a way that is harmonious. So one of the principles of political conduct is that a person's speech should be with pleasantness and not with anger and contentiousness most of the time. Okay. Ella shilif amim tzarech lifi ha'inyanim. But sometimes this is necessary based on the circumstances. Okay, so in other words, you should, generally speaking, not be someone who speaks in an angry and harsh manner. You should, generally speaking, speak pleasantly, but sometimes you need to speak in an angry manner. Okay, ha'adam mare atmo kaos. Okay, so he says sometimes this is necessary based on the circumstances. Sorry, sometimes it is necessary based on the circumstances. Adam mare atmo kaos, to appear angry, ubal divrei rivos, and contentious, lahatil ema le'utadim letochachto, in order to instill dread in those who are subject to your rebuke. Okay, so like for disciplinary purposes. Okay. Olifamim achas kasha achas raka. Hakolafi, or sometimes you need to be harsh in one regard and soft in another regard. Hakolafi hatarach va'inyan, all based on the particular circumstances. Kamosha Amru Chazal, as Chazal say. Now I looked this up right before shiur and I couldn't find it, so I don't know if this is a miscitation. Al hakas habilti naus Rabbi Ploni hava baza manoi lemirme imsa al inshe bese. Okay, so I just don't know what bazui manui means, but he would do something to instill fear to the members of his household. Okay, so in other words, he gave us an example where a person like had to like behave in a certain way to like, let's say, like get his children to behave. Lezeh amar milas rak. That's why it says only. Klomar, in other words, mi she'eno medaber rak b'zadon ushunya, someone who only speaks like bizadon and contentiously, yitin matzah, will instill strife. Klomar, in other words, Yasmin v'yamsi riv umatza, he will produce quarreling and conflict. V'im noatzim, but with those who take counsel, Rotzlamar, in other words, ha'osim masem be'etza, those who do their actions with advice, uvaskamas chachma v'das, and with and based in line with wisdom and knowledge. Lishkul b'mozne tzedek al eze davar roy l'daber b'kas b'trunia, to weigh on the scales of righteousness which matters are appropriate to be said in an angry and contentious manner, and which matters should be said softly and pleasantly. He says the word zadon in this context means contentiously, and with literally like flood. There's got to be a better word for that here, because he says minyan hamaim hazedonim, I can't say contentious floodwaters. Sweeping floodwaters. Yeah, there's got to be a better word in English for this. So in other words, so what he's saying, so we got to get everything we said about Zadon out of our minds. He's saying Zadon, so he's translating Meiri's translation. Meiri's translation is Rak bezadon itin matzah. If a person only speaks with speaks like angrily, okay, he will generate strife. The es noatim, but if he speaks angrily, based on wise counsel, the es hatznuim chachma, then what? Okay, hold on a second. No, I think he's saying like this. I'm just trying to see how he translates. He's trying to. I can't get how he's translating the pasuk. The message of the pasuk, according to him, is that sometimes it is appropriate to speak angrily, but you have to do that based on chachma. And if you just do that all the time, then that is going to create strife. I just don't know how he's reading the pasuk. But there's an idea. What idea could we get out of this? I think this is a pasuk about communication. But how would you summarize his main idea? Yeah, Ayala?
It reminds me of like the Rambam's middle path, that like speech and like I guess intonation and like the way you speak shouldn't be based off of like whatever you happen to be like feeling or thinking in the moment, but
Yeah.
it should be like used as a tool to productively convey whatever message you're trying
Okay.
to.
That's a good articulation of the second half. Let me just refine the question. By the way, I think I got the translation. He's saying Rak bezadon yitain matzah, the es noatim chachma. If a person only speaks angrily, he will generate strife, unless he speaks angrily based on wise counsel. Something like that, like you should only speak then. So my question for Ayala, or for everyone, based on what Ayala is saying, is who's the audience of the pasuk? Who needs to hear this?
Maybe a leader.
Okay, yeah, that's the category of person. But I guess what mistaken notion needs to be corrected by this pasuk? So to me, it sounds like this is talking to someone who thinks that the default way to get results, or the best way to get results, is to speak angrily or forcefully, And I think I don't know exactly how many versions of this there are, but let's say like in my own profession in teaching, I think there are like certain teachers who think that like the way you get your classroom in order is to always like speak in a strict and harsh and disciplined manner, like get people in line. Or in the military, like there's a certain military like type of thing where you always yell at people, and like are demanding about that. And what it's saying is that that's just going to generate strife, because there is, I think the opposite of this pasuk is really in chapter 15, I think. Ma'ane rach. Oh no, maybe it's not here. Oh no, divrei chachamim benachas nishma'im. Well, let me see here. Hold on. I might be mixing things up. There is a pasuk in 15:1 that says, Mane rach yashiv chema udvar esav yale af. A soft reply turns away wrath, but a provocative remark incites anger. That's talking. I think Rabbeinu Yonah there learns that it's literally talking about like the tone of your voice. Or there's another one, divrei chachamim benachas nishma'im. This is in Koheles. Divrei chachamim benachas nishma'im mizakas Moshe baksilim. The words of the wise are heard with pleasantness, more so than the shouting of a ruler among fools. So I think that this is talking to someone who does think, like, especially the way the Meiri started it off. One of the principles of political conduct is that your speech should be with pleasantness. So like this is talking to someone who thinks that as a matter of political principle, or like Ayala saying, like a leadership policy, you should speak harshly and be harsh. But what you don't realize, and I think the reason why that's like people think that works, is it does instill fear, especially if you're very harsh, or if people are constantly afraid that you're going to blow up at them. But there's a side effect, which is it's going to create contentiousness, either overtly, that people are going to actually react angrily to your anger, or they're going to be so afraid to like voice their opinion or to violate your will that bad things are going to happen that are going to create contentious situations in the future. Like, again, to me, like the best, I've probably used this example before, but if you've ever seen the show Chernobyl, about the Chernobyl disaster, that's what it's called, then the nuclear disaster, part of the problem was that in because of the way the hierarchy was set up, no one wanted to do anything that would give them, that would cause them to take blame. So they just all ignored it or like passed up the blame on the chain of command, and then it caused all these problems. So what this is saying is no, the default should be pleasantness, because he's not saying why, but presumably because first of all, you're going to avoid this strife, but also you're going to like invite the type of openness that we were discussing in our approach, and it shows a certain dignity and like kavod habrios, like respect for the other person's feelings and psyche, and like a camaraderie and all of these positive emotions, which the leader can then harness for the good. And yeah, sometimes you need to put on an angry or contentious, like forceful show, but it should be like a limited, targeted strike, not something that's like a default policy. Yeah, Noah says in the chat, a ton of women are given bad advice to that effect, overcompensating for femininity with aggression. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I can unfortunately see that. Yeah. Right, you got to be a tough guy. Like that's like yeah, I guess that's like that you got to be a tough guy, and you got to like show them who's boss. That is like what advice given to men, that now people are recognizing is not good. But I guess that it's taking a generation or two to like catch up, and people are giving that to women to overcompensate. Okay, so there's that. Should we do one more or not? Let me just skim this really quickly. No, you know what? I think this is good for now. Oh, by the way, unfolding drama. I bought this book called The Challenge of Received Tradition, Dilemmas of Interpretation in Radak's Biblical Commentaries by Naomi Grunhaus. And I need to research this, but she says in parentheses that she has a conclusion that Radak on Mishlei is not actually written by the Radak, which was a little disappointing to me because I really like the Radak on Mishlei. So she wrote a paper about this, which I have to read, but just a FYI, wanted to mention it. Okay, so let's review what we have. So the fullest idea we had, which we developed collaboratively in line with the spirit of the pasuk, is that this is a pasuk about either teamwork or leadership styles, which is that if you may think that if you have a vision or a plan or an idea, then imposing it on other people is going to be the best because it's the best plan. But what the pasuk is saying is, even if this is the best plan, the derech, the approach of imposing on other people, is just going to generate strife. You're not going to get good results, and you're not going to get cooperation. But if you take the opposite approach and are open to counsel, so not only will that be a self-corrective thing where you might improve your plan, you might find mistakes that you overlook, but also people will want to work with you. And you can even, if your plan is the best plan, then you'll have more people who are on your side who are willing to implement it, then you're going to get better results all around. So that is the main idea, and that's showing that Zadon and Chachma are opposites, or really Zadon and openness to Chachma. Chachma in the sense of Ezihu Chacham Halama Mikol Adam, who is wise, one who learns from everyone. That's the best policy. Then we have Metzudas David's idea, which is that if you see someone who is always getting into fights, that should be a red flag that there's evil going on, Mishleic evil there. Whereas if you see someone who's at peace with everyone, who's never getting into fights, then that should be a green flag. Is that an expression? That there is a chachma there, so yeah, I think that I think that says something about certain political figures as well. I'm not going to say much about that. Then we had some half approaches that we didn't fully develop. We had Ariel's approach, which is similar, but also trying to say that the second half is talking about acting with confidence, which is like the Chachma version of Zadon. And we had Isaiah's thing about if you're yielding and you accept Chachma, then there will be like a diffusion of responsibility and blame. Whereas if you barrel forward with your plan, then you're going to take the fall exclusively. And then we have the Meiri's idea, which I didn't write down. Meiri's idea, which is that that if you think that the default, this really is also a leadership policy, is to speak harshly with people, all you're going to do is foment strife, okay, whether like directly by like making people angry, or indirectly by making them so fearful that they don't come forward when they need to, and they conceal things from you which end up generating bad consequences and strife. Okay, I know that's not a good sentence. Okay, strife. Whereas the correct approach is to default to pleasant speech and only use angry speech sparingly. By the way, another thing also that I just want to add is that Rambam says that you should never get angry, and only sometimes you should play the part of an angry man, like in a play. Like externally you should act angry, but internally you should be calm, which is what the Meiri is saying as well. I think another problem is if you're always speaking angrily, you will become angry. And the most extreme example of that is the famous Stanford prison experiment, where you had people who played the parts of prison guards, and people who played the parts of prisoners, where like if you act the part long enough, you're like the Sefer Chinuch always says, your emotions follow your actions. So if you're always speaking angrily and harshly, you're going to start to become that. If you always wield your speech like a forceful leader, you're going to start to get power hungry and stuff. So I think that's another a way that you can generate strife through doing the bad decision. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, I was just gonna say on the Meiri, like two things. Number one, like similar to what you were just saying about the Rambam, that it also reminded me of Igaras HaRamban, and like that whole concept. And then another thing, which is that I don't think it's like necessarily only like applicable to leaders. Just because I was thinking, I mean, I guess this example is someone that's like a little bit higher than someone else. But basically, I know someone that not their direct boss, but one of the bosses in the place they work is very much like this. And like literally everyone else in the circle like that works with her doesn't, like, they're literally nervous to say anything, like even like a formal thing that you would report to. So I think even like a lower level, like not necessarily like a dictatorship, you can still have these results like your coworkers.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's very good advice. Yeah, it is weird. It ended up being weird that not weird, bad, that the Meiri and we both approach this in terms of like teamwork and leadership, even though there was slightly different ideas. I mean, I guess it's not so weird because it is talking about creating strife with other people, but yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording just to say something minor, but I think that's it for now. I'll pause it just in case I